Good evening. What I wanted to talk about today was the water fluoridation in Sacramento and around California. I wanted to know why this is not being addressed by anybody, why it's not being put out in the news, the media is not covering it. It says that the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services exists to enhance safety and preparedness through strong leadership, collaboration, and meaningful relationships. It says our goal is to protect lives and property by effectively providing, preparing, and responding to and recovering from all threats, crimes, hazards, and emergencies. The question I want to ask is, how come none of this is being addressed, and isn't that a threat to everybody's safety? Water fluoridation is known to cause all sorts of diseases, to dumb people down. I want to know why none of this is being talked about. The CDC and vaccine industry have kept all of this from the public and the media when the media knows what's going on. And I know that the mayor knows about this too. And I want to know why it's not being addressed more. And one thing that I wanted to say about fluoride is there are many cities around the country that are taking this out of their city water supply. I wanted to know if Sacramento County and other counties around, what they're doing about this, what they're doing to stop it. I have many news sources that are not coming off of Fox News or CNN or any of those news websites, and I can give you news sources if you'd like to hear them.
All right, Chad, we need your final thought, please.
I'm sorry?
We need your final thought.
Okay. My final thought is on the gun confiscation. I want to know why police officers around the state are going around to people's houses without warrantless searches and taking their guns away when they legally own them. I want to know why they're putting bans on certain weapons, the amount of bullets that you can hold. I want to know why that there are illegally going into people's houses and doing this, and nobody is talking about it.
All right.
300 tons of radioactive water from Fukushima enters the Pacific. That means the total amount of radioactive material released is constantly increasing and steadily building up in our food and water supply. San Francisco, Geiger counters have found anywhere from 62 counts per minute all the way up to 400, some higher. The normal average is 30. That's 1,000 to 1,500 times or 10 times normal radiation found in the tap water. That's 18,100% above the drinking water limit. There's an epidemic of sea lion deaths along the coastline. And experts have found very high levels of cesium-137 in plankton living in waters along the coast. So it's not background radiation. One test found 15 out of 15 bluefin tuna were contaminated with radiation. 73% of mackerel, 71% of halibut, 92% of sardines, 93% of tuna and eel, 94% of cod and anchovies, 100% of carp, seaweed, shark, and monkfish, 100 times greater than Chernobyl. And if you think that's not affecting Sacramento, you better think different. Some of you know McClellan Air Force Base buried a massive amount of radium-contaminated soil into the ground where it's being leaked into the water supply. And if you don't know, ask anyone who works there. There's no debate about it. There's also reports that radioactive debris from Fukushima is being buried in North Highlands right next to a water supply. So I urge you to look up the Nuclear Emergency Tracking Center map. I also called KCRA, and they said they were discussing it. Discussing what?
Chad, if you could.
Why don't they tell people about that? That's putting everybody's life at risk, and nobody is talking about it on the news.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Freedom of Information Act request posted on informable.com. Transmissions between federal, state, and local officials, as well as other governments, show they're well aware of the high levels of radiation from Fukushima on the West Coast and the whole nation. Infants born after March 17, 2012 in California are exposed to 40,000 becquerels of iodine-131 that causes thyroid cancer. There's an actual letter from the FDA telling physicians in California not to put people on potassium iodide, which helps guard against radiation poisoning. Complete violation. The only thing I can take from that is they don't want to panic the public, which is understandable. The problem is radiation isn't accumulative, meaning unless you do something to protect against the radiation, it's only going to accumulate more and more in the body, and eventually people are going to get sick and die. This is a public safety issue, and it's been going on for 3 years now, and there's no media coverage, no public officials telling us how to protect ourselves. Cesium-134 and 137 are in the pollen, in the water, in the air. And let me read you something from Section 802 of the First Patriot Act passed October 27, 2001. Any action, terrorism, any action that endangers human life that is a violation of any federal or state law. So if you're being forced by government officials or higher-ups not to report on this stuff, on this public safety issue, the people who are your bosses, if you don't have the guts and the courage to stand up to them and tell the people that they're being poisoned and how to take care of themselves, then maybe you should just resign.
Okay, Mr. Taylor.
And leave your positions up to people that and to let the people do it for you.
Mr. Taylor,
or you should be fired for not addressing a public safety issue.
Mr. Taylor.
And get rid of all the fluoride in our water, which we didn't vote to have for in our water.
Mr. Taylor.
And I urge
Mr.
everybody
Taylor.
to go to Fukushima radiation victims.
Thank you.
And I'd like to tell people solutions.
Mr. Taylor.
For the radiation.
I need you to. Yes, it is.
Foods, filtering water, taking supplements.
Mr. Taylor, I don't want to have to ask the guard to remove you, so thank you. Thank you.
Talk about some solutions for people to protect themselves against radiation poisoning. As far as eating whole foods or filtering their water or taking supplements such as potassium iodide or nascent iodine, any gourmet salt or anything high in potassium such as avocados or bananas. You could add organic apple cider vinegar to your water, any kind of seaweed not from the Pacific, spices like turmeric, rosemary, or curry. Wash fruits and vegetables in a baking soda water solution for 20 minutes. You can put plants such as ferns in your house, which absorb toxic chemicals and fumes. And just a few plants in your house can increase the clean flow of oxygen. And yeah, I don't think 2 minutes is long enough to address a public safety issue, especially when you guys never acknowledge it. And I think that's a complete better violation of state and federal law.
Thank you.
Nuclear fallout map that I got from globalresearch.com showing the nuclear fallout coming to the coast of California right there. So there's your proof right there of radiation hitting our coast that nobody's addressing and telling the public how to keep themselves safe. And also, a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned a bunch of percentages of animals and plants that are being radiated. And the bluefin tuna percentage is now up to 100% of our bluefin tuna is contaminated with radiation. And also much of the kelp. And So, you know, there's radiation out here, and that's going in our water. And some of this waste from Fukushima is being buried in Sacramento, particularly in North Highlands, right next to a city water supply. I mean, you know, you're putting fluoric acid in the water. I think it's time to have a new discussion about that. I don't remember voting to have poisonous acid added to my water. And that's another thing that could be saving the city a lot of money just by taking that stuff out. So there's a couple public safety issues here that need to be addressed. You know, people's health and safety are at risk here.
Ron Inslee?
Yes, these men and their hypnotized followers call this a new order. It is not new, and it is not order.